Hi everyone, welcome back to the Wonder of Anime podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, a multimedia content creator, and my work spans across my blog, my YouTube channel, and of course, this podcast. I am so excited this week because my guest is someone that I've been fangirling over since I discovered his work on Instagram, and we're going to get into that, but I have the amazing Serrandon with us. Serrandon is a director, photographer, and content creator based in Los Angeles. Inspired by anime, video games, and pop culture of the late 90s and 2000s, Serrandon produces vibrant, in-your-face content that makes you feel like a tween again. Serrandon has a web series called Plug In, an immersive retrospective show that gives a fresh perspective on video games, tech, and toys from yesteryear. Serrandon, welcome to the show!
Hello! Hi, Lisa! Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for coming on. This is a dream, and the stuff that you make, and of course I'm going to have links to all your stuff everywhere, but I want to share a little backstory of how I discovered you, because a content creator that I follow, her name is Fantastic Frankie, and she had shared one of your reels on her stories, and I'm someone, like, as a content creator, I like discovering new content creators, so I'm always like, click, who am I going to? And I think the first video of yours that I saw, what was it? It was one of, maybe was it the Beyblades one? It was Beyblade. It was so cool. It was just like nothing that I ever seen before, just visually what you were talking about. And I was like, oh, this is somebody that's serious. Like, I was like, this, he knows what he's doing. And then I had like gone on a binge on your existing reels. So I had followed you ever since. And then we just started being in each other's comments. And I'm like, oh, we are the same. Like, we here. So I was very excited when I discovered that you were an anime fan. Because like sometimes, like, I know that there's a lot of crossover with video games and animes, but not always. And some people are very like anti-anime. So I was like, let me just check the waters. I think so. But I was like, this just makes perfect sense. So I'm very glad that you were an anime fan. And that's how I discovered you, and I recruited you for the show. So I'm so glad that you agreed to come on here. And I wanted, for people who are unfamiliar with you or the series that you have, if you could tell us a little bit of what kind of inspired you, to be this visual artist that you are, and this, I feel like this unique lane that you're in that I really don't see anyone else in right now.
Oh, well, thank you, Lisa. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. So yeah, I have a web series called Plug In. I really kind of just landed on a name for it recently. For a while, it was just like, I was like, I have a game show. But essentially, it's a kind of multi-dimensional show where I spotlight retro games, tech, toys, from back in the day or from our childhood and things like that. But I try to do it in a fun way. I like to create motion graphics and kind of visualizers to really kind of tell the story and really kind of bring the world of that topic that I'm covering into your face. I used to watch G4 TV back when, RIP, but I used to watch G4 TV, especially during like summer break. I would just spend all day watching like X-Play and especially watching their documentaries. And I would just always be in awe of just like how captivating and how interesting it was. And then of course, growing up watching like Disney Channel and Cartoon Network and Toonami and just all of these things, I really wanted to find a way to kind of bring the essence of like what I thought was really exciting about those things and that type of media into my own world today. Because I feel like with the way social media and TV and just the way we consume content and stuff like that, it's not as linear as it used to be. So we don't really get to see that type of content anymore. So I was like, well, I think it'd be fun to bring it back and to have fun and to bring color and bring energy and just like be playful with it and try to make it something that even if you don't necessarily know that game or you don't remember that toy or whatever, like you can learn something and still have a good time watching it. So I try to kind of present it in a way that this is something for everyone. And if you, even if you're not into video games or something like that, like, you will still enjoy the visuals, you will enjoy the color, you'll enjoy the presentation of it all. So I try to make it as for everybody, rated E for everyone.
That literally is what it is. And I love the way that you put that, because there definitely is something about that time period and, those channels that you mentioned and those shows that you mentioned that were very tech heavy, futuristic, like what we thought tech and stuff would look like today, like really chunky and bright and vibrant, and like things don't look like that now. Kind of disappointing.
Not at all. Very, very disappointing.
Like, we could add so many cool options, and we have this black brick that, like, can't really.
Like, you're lucky to get even in some color. Like, it's usually just gray, space gray, silver,
And they'd be like, here, damn, like they get mad at us for wanting vibrant, colorful things. It's like such the norm. So, and I think too, like, it's so great that you incorporated that in your content, because it just fits so perfectly. And as I said, it's like makes it so different, because a lot of people like aren't doing that. And it just is like something that you just really have to stop and be like, whoa, what is he talking about? Like, especially when it's stuff that you remember. I'm trying to pull up your Instagram now, because I have a certain image of a video that you did, like, in my mind. And I'm thinking was it the one that you were sitting on, I don't know if it was like a GameCube and stuff. You're always doing something. Like,
oh yeah, the Sega Dreamcast, remember,
yes.
The VMU. Yes, the VMU.
Those are so creative.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's awesome. With that, as a career, this is what you do professionally as well. How did you get into this lane? Have you always been like creative as a child? Like, how does one become this? Because it's so cool.
Yeah, I've always been, I feel like I was making content before it was called being a content creator, before people would have ever thought it would have been what it is today. I started like in high school and stuff. I would like throw some videos on YouTube. They would get no love, or, just my friends would watch it. But to me, it was enough. I was just trying to find ways to express myself. And I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. And when I moved to LA to work and try to find work and be creative for a living, because at that point that started to become a thing, I didn't know anyone out here. I was kind of just in my little studio apartment, just trying to find outlets and trying to find ways to express myself. And I had an idea once where I was like, I want to do like a cool video with like phones. And I kind of went and thrifted a few phones and like made this little video in my room. And from there, it was kind of abstract in a way. And I think it resonated with just, the few people who watched it. They're like, this is cool. And I was like, cool. And to me, I felt like, oh, this felt cool. And I think from there, I just kept expanding and expanding from that. And as I got more comfortable just being a content creator and collaborating with people, I really wanted to kind of hone in. I started to find myself like wanting to create and try to like satisfy like algorithms, or try to like find jobs, and, being like, maybe I need to make this type of content so I can like get this type of work and stuff like that. But at one point I just realized, like a couple years ago, I was like, I don't feel like I'm necessarily connecting with that content anymore. And I wanted to find a way to kind of bring it back and kind of like start over in a sense. And that's where the series plugin kind of came into fruition, because I was in a place where I was like really wanting to get a Sega Dreamcast. I'd never owned one before. And I was like, maybe this is like the moment I can like make some content around that. And I like kind of documented myself like getting the Sega Dreamcast and getting Jet Set Radio for it. And after I had filmed like initially that like documentary part, I was like, actually, I kind of want to like talk about this game, because then I started to like, I'm a nerd. I started doing research about it and stuff. I was like, I feel like I want to just give information, and it just kind of started to fall into place the way it was. And when I made that video, I was like, I think I want to like really build onto this. And there's like, I have a collection of a lot of games, and there are so many games that I'm trying to revisit. So like, why don't I just kind of make this a journey? And from there, it just kind of kept building and building. And then I was just like, okay, I really like this. I want to like up the production, and I want to, you know, try to make this look as cool as it can be. Because like we kind of said earlier, like I wasn't really seeing this type of content before. I hadn't seen, you know, someone that looks like me making this type of content before. So I was like, I think this is a really cool opportunity to like put something like this together and just see how far I can push this. So that's kind of where I've been at with it, and it's just been really fun.
That's such a testament to like listening to yourself. Like you were going in one direction and that kind of didn't fit anymore. And that's something that I see a lot with, like, I feel like we're the same when we grew up with like YouTube and stuff. So we seen the rise of the content creators and the influencers, where a lot of people kind of like feel like they got to keep making what they were making 10 years ago, because that's something that people know them for. And it's like that alignment to pivot. And then once you went in that direction, how all of these other things just lined up for you. Like it was just meant for to be that path that you followed. I love that. That's such a like great, I'm very woo woo. It's such a like great testimony of a journey. It's just like so many lessons in that.
Yeah, no, I think, it's interesting because like you were saying, like we're kind of on the other end of like this beginning of like this rise of like content creators and all of this stuff. So it's easy to be influenced to think that like you have to position yourself a certain way. It kind of feels like school, like high school and stuff again, where you feel like you need to like mold yourself into something that you're not to fit in a way. And then it's really kind of coming back into your own and leaning into the things that make you unique and you interesting. And, it really just starts to work on its own. Like when I started making these videos, I didn't expect to end up elevating it the way I have been able to elevate it so far. And it's just like organically started to come that way when I'm like writing scripts for like the next videos, and I'm like, why don't I incorporate this? And I was like, okay, I kind of like that. And then I just do it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like how that looks. I'm gonna just start doing that going forward, and it just starts to kind of craft itself. So it's easy being yourself.
The lesson in everything after school, but I think it sounds like so simple and so cliche, but we're really living in an era where people are just copying and pasting. Like I'm not on TikTok anymore, but you'd be on TikTok and it's 10 videos in a row, the same sound, the same day in my life, different people with the same clips, and it's just like people are like, I'm being myself, but you're being this curated self for social media, for the algorithm. That's not really you.
That part as well. Like, there's this, and I would get feedback from, people when I was initially like creating this, and people were like, it sounds like you're putting on, like you're turning on into this person, into like what you're doing on this camera. And I'm like, well, kind of to what you're saying about like not being yourself. Like, I think it's like being a version of yourself. Cause I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't talk that animated in real life. However, it's like, it fits what I'm trying to do with this project. So it is kind of like an extension of you. And I think if more people lean into being just like who they are, like really just telling stories about things that they are truly passionate about, like it's going to connect with those people. It may take a little longer or something, but it's just going to hit a lot different when it does like connect with people and people resonate with it. And it's going to, I don't know, just inspire you to do more things and to just make more original content. So.
Yes. And also to the people that are like, this doesn't sound like you, we're multifaceted. Like we have so many sides of ourselves, and so many interests bring like different levels of you, and you show up differently. Like, me, I love anime, and I'm like, oh my God, anime. But then, don't get me talking about this Kate Middleton thing, because then I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on and I'm going to be a whole different version of myself. It's like we can show up different ways for different subjects and still all be us.
Absolutely. I love a tinfoil hat.
You know, I got my moments.
I love a good
On fun, safe stuff. Disclaimer: not no crazy stuff. Before people are like, no, I don't. But the one thing I did want to touch about, because this is also recent, is that you have a short film out, and the cover looks amazing. And I wanted to talk about this because I just love the fact that you like imagine like you could say like, oh, I have a short film. Like, who could say that, first of all? Like, that's just so cool. But you have a short film called Gotta Have It. And it just, and I will be sure to put the visuals on the podcast, the video version of it. But for those just listening, it is the most, like, I feel like you're time traveling when you're looking at this poster. It is a girl with really bright makeup, really like Y2K outfit. She has like a portable disc player in her hands. And it just, I'm like, where did this come from? This looks like you took it out from like a time box, and like, you know, like those time boxes that we used to do, and that's what it feels like. So if you could tell us a little bit about this project, because it just looks so cool.
Oh, well, thank you. Shout out to Gotta Have It. Yes, I have a short film that we're submitting in festivals right now called Gotta Have It. As you mentioned, it's inspired by the 2000s. It's about a teenage girl who really wants this new portable DVD player. And she kind of has her mom is not on the same page with her. And some really out-of-pocket things happen to make sure she gets what she wants. It's a really, I call it in my head like a super short, but it's, you know, when I was creating it, it was like a script I wrote on a random night. Like, I was just having fun. I was feeling like a little creative. I was like, let me like just express myself in however way I can before bed. And I like wrote this story, and maybe a few months later, like we ended up putting it together. And when I was looking for like the actresses for it, like I really wanted to like lean deep into like just that Disney image. I was like, I need this girl. And shout out to Barbara Reed. She's the teenage girl in it. But when I saw her, I was like, that's my girl. I was like, that is my girl. I need her. And she wasn't even born when like I'm giving her these references.
Oh my God.
We're like having a call, and I'm like talking through like, you know, this is how you're gonna look, and you know, I'm like showing her references of like kind of what the character is gonna look like, and she's like, oh my God, like my brother and sister used to watch that show when I was like a baby. I was like, oh my God, like you weren't even born. But she absolutely nailed it. You would have thought she was around at that time. But it's really fun, and it will be coming out soon. We're just submitting it around, trying to get some eyes on it, and you know, have fun with it. But hopefully I'll have it screening in every city very, very soon.
I'm excited. And you said portable DVD player, and it's like the memories, because I can't tell you someone who didn't want one. Like, that just was like the epitome of like, let's like today not having like the latest iPhone for like a teen, because I didn't even have DVDs, and I wanted a portable, like, I'm just like, the possibilities were endless.
Absolutely. Like, and again, they were colorful, they were fun. Like, it was just so fun to have it, and to, you know, just tangible items. I miss tangible things like that. But yeah, you know, peer pressure. It'll make you want everything.
Oh my God. And this is so random. Do you remember the first wave of like MP3 players? And they basically were like a USB, and they had a little screen. They were like, I remember my best friend got one, and I was like, Mom, Dad, like, we have to like get this, please. And they went to Walmart and got me one, because I was like, oh my God. They would have like a whopping 2 gigabytes of storage. We're like, it has 2 gigs. I can save like 50 songs. Like, imagine just having 2 gigabytes of storage on anything nowadays. And you just like, you load up your LimeWire songs on there. The Bill Clinton, his, you know, it's either that or it's like Soulja Boy or something. Like, it's you know, especially if it was like a deep cut song, like it's not like a top 40 hit. You're just, I don't know. Never know what you're trying to get. It was questionable different times. But I'm excited for that. And I'll be sure once, updated information comes out when it's screening places, I'll let everyone know so they can support, because we're all about the support here. But now we're going to be moving on. This intro could be a whole separate podcast too. But the real reason that I wanted to have you on here was to talk about, because I was like, based on what you like in these games, I know you got a fire anime that you're going to want to talk about. And you did not disappoint. And today you're going to be talking about Digimon Tamers. Which followers of mine will know that I recently had been on a Digimon kick, because I had saw the movies, and then I'm in the process of rewatching season 1. So I always like to start off this section just about, me and my experience with the specific anime that my guest is talking about. And Digimon Tamers is actually one that I caught when it was airing, but I was so I had watched literally season 1 and season 2 as they were airing, saw the finales live, everything. And then they were like, oh, new season, da-da-da-da. I think it was on Fox Kids at this point. I was like, yes, I'm ready. And when it started, it was such a completely different premise than the Digimon season 1 and 2 that I said no, and I turned it off. And I never went back. That was I think I was 7 or 8 when that happened. Fast forward to high school, a friend of mine was like, oh, you like Digimon? I have a bunch of Digimon VHS tapes with again, unlocking our age here, with Digimon recorded on the tapes, straight from the TV with the commercials. So I remember I had rewatched, I think they had season 1, season 2, and then they had season 3, and I was like, oh yeah, I never saw this. And I was like, wait, let me just stay tuned though and see what happens. And I had seen a lot of it, don't remember any of it, but I do remember that I didn't finish it because that was the end of the VHS tapes. And I was like, oh my god, why didn't I ever get into this? So that is my history with Digimon Tamers. So I'm going to now turn the floor over to you, the expert, especially since you've been rewatching it. That's one thing I don't expect people to, but people come on and they're like, I just finished redoing the rewatch. I'm like, oh, y'all are prepared. So Serrandon, tell us, what is Digimon Tamers?
Look, and ditto that, I was like, I'm not about to go on this unprepared. So Digimon Tamers is the 3rd season of Digimon. Kind of to what you were saying, I think with the way television and things were broadcasted back in the day, they weren't as transparent about these shows and what it is. So we went into the first 2 seasons where the characters ended up being proper sequels. Tai and everyone was on season 2. They were just a little older. So that's kind of what our expectation was. So when season 3 came, we were like, oh, okay, this is just the new kids. Where's Davis? Where's all these people? And they were nowhere to be seen. So Tamers is its own series within the Digimon franchise about initially 3 kids, Takato, Rika, and Henry. Following, obviously, the basic formula of Digimon. They're the chosen children in the sense where they are gifted or they receive Digimon partners. They're called Tamers. Or the Takato, Henry, and Rika are called Tamers, and they receive partners. They're Digimons, which are Gyomon for Takato, Renamon for Rika, and Terriermon for Henry. And essentially, there has been some weird occurrences in their city. They live in Tokyo, where Digimon are coming through this portal, and there's this organization that's a little who are y'all, that are monitoring everything, and they're keeping up with these occurrences that are happening, and they're trying to prevent it. So essentially in the beginning, what Takato, Henry, and Rika are doing is they're fighting these Digimon. They're also trying to understand what a partnership is, and through that it's challenging a lot of their personal struggles that they're going through. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because this is kind of going into some other things I want to get about with Digimon. But they're learning about themselves. They're evolving with their Digimon in that sense. And they end up finding out that there is kind of this war between Digimon, who were created by humans, who kind of now have a lot more autonomy and a lot more say into what they want their life to be, versus humans who are like, no, you aren't real, but it's like, we are real now. And we want our own stuff, and there's this big war going on of like them trying to take over, destroy humans so they can live the life that they want, and humans trying to, fight off these Digimon so, they can maintain the life that we have. And it's this big disagreement, this big like war, and it just gets really dark, which was very different about this season to me.
I forgot all of this. Do not remember. And I'm like, are we talking about the same show? It is so, and we'll get into this, but Digimon, I feel like, is so, people just have so misinformed about how really deep it gets. And it is mind blowing to me, because I think too, like, that came out so long ago for
2001.
Man, like, what was we doing in 2001? So to have those themes like so long ago, and it's themes that you'll see in anime and stuff today, it's just absolutely like mind blowing to me that we were talking about and we were doing these type of things back then.
What was really, and what really blew my mind when I was watching it, because like we were talking about earlier, I've been binge watching this. Also didn't realize this season had 51 episodes. I was like, what?
That's
yeah, I was like, that's like a lot. I got to like 40 right before this call, so I'm like, I got the gist. But one thing I didn't realize that they were talking so much about was AI. And I was like, whoa, like, I don't even think, I mean, I know there were movies called Artificial Intelligence and stuff like that, but like, just how ahead of its time this season was, and about how like AI has really, in the show, has gotten, it's taken a life on its own. These Digimon have taken a life on their own. They're AI. And now, again, like, they have their own wants and needs and desires, and they have a right to feel that way. So it made my brain go on a different realm of like, are we like foreshadowing? Like, what's about to happen here? Like, but yeah, like, this is really relevant right now. So it was just blowing my mind that, again, like, I was like, this was a kid's show? Like, this should have, and kind of what you were saying, like with Digimon just being very misunderstood, like, it was created initially to be a response to Pokemon, but there were just so many talented creators behind it that really like took it and ran with it and created something to me that was just way more sophisticated and complex and layered than Pokemon. And because of the name and the way that, these, Bandai and things, not like no shade to Bandai, but like the way these toy companies, because the thing about the 90s and the 2000s, and the 80s as well, is a lot of cartoons would not be greenlit unless they could have toys. Mm-hmm. Like, that was the point of cartoons, were to sell products. That's why there were 5 Power Rangers, different colors, is because they need to sell, that's 5 different toys they can sell. So, to them, their only priority is like, can we push this as a product? And if Pokemon is selling like that, then they want to sell Digimon that way. But to me, Digimon just was, I feel like if it was pushed to like young adults, teens, young adults versus like little kids, it probably would have been a totally different, I think the outcome could have been a bit different for them holistically, but it's such a gem. Yes. I'm sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, I love that, because I think too that's so helpful when people, like, we look back at stuff with a very different lens, because we're looking at about like back, like, oh my god, nostalgia, and we don't really see the reality of like, yes, like, these shows and cartoons were made to push products, and that also informs a lot of how the show operated. So sometimes when people like try to critique cartoons with like today's mind, I'm like, you can't, it's not a one-to-one comparison, because it didn't work like that back then, and it's not fair to do that. I know we've been talking about you rewatching it, but when were you initially introduced to Digimon Tamers?
So I was introduced to it when it made its premiere, like you were saying, on Fox Kids back in the day. So I would I was an avid Fox Kids fan. So I watched it at that point from start to finish. I didn't I think I took it a lot differently as a child because, again, like the first two seasons were a lot lighter. They weren't as dark. So I think when it started to get on deeper topics on the show, I would kind of check out, or I would be more just interested in the spectacle of like the evolution and stuff like that, and the sequences and the action. I wasn't necessarily as like invested into the story itself. But yeah, I watched it. I'm an OG Fox Kids. I watched it when it came out.
Listen, we were there. Those premieres.
We were there.
So when did you know that this is like one of your favorite animes, or like favorite franchises? Like when was that moment that you realized that?
Digimon as a whole, immediately. Like my cousin introduced it to me. He introduced me to all of the like anime in general. He's the one that was like, "Hey, there's this thing you should watch." We were like babies, and I was just like, "Ooh." But literally season one of Digimon, the moment I saw TK and Patamon, I was in. Digimon stand, like to the point that I really believed there was a digital world, and I was just waiting for my moment. I was like, when do I get my Digivice? Like, get me out of Earth. I want to go to Digiworld. So, as a whole, like, I just knew from day one, Digimon Tamers specifically, I didn't actually gain an appreciation for this series the way I have until recently. Like last year, I did a video about one of the first Digimon games, Digimon World. And when I was doing research on it obviously I went down a rabbit hole of just like Digimon and the makings of it, and it made me kind of revisit some of the topics of like the original series. And I was like, Digimon Tamers is a lot different than I remember it. And another anime that I'm a big fan of is Neon Genesis Evangelion. I'm a big fan of that. And just from looking at it, Tamers, like just from like looking at clips and stuff, immediately I was starting to see parallels, and I was like, let me actually like get back into this anime. And since rewatching it, it's really hitting on me. I'm like, oh wow, like these are very similar. They have very similar themes and tones and stuff to them. So I think like as an adult, like seeing this series again, I was like, okay, this is one of my faves now.
I love so much about what you said about gaining an appreciation for stuff, because I used to never rewatch anything. Like I was like, I've seen it once, I'm good. I don't know why. Like it's hard for me to rewatch stuff, but I could reread stuff all the time. And then similarly, to you, like rewatching Digimon recently, I had um I had gotten access to the second movie that they just re-aired in theaters. And I was like, well, I don't like for like a press review thing. And I was like, I never ended up seeing the first one because I actually, when the first one came to theaters, I even had like, I do like events locally. And I was like, we're going to do a Digimon meetup. And then COVID happened. And it was that weekend, and like all the movies, everything shut down. So I was like, oh, I never got to watching it again. And I'm talking about Digimon The Last Kazuna. I think that's what it's called. The Last Evolution Kazuna. And, so I rewatched it like a couple months ago, and I was just like, I love you, Digimon. You're the best. This is because I've always loved it and held it in high regard. But like what you were saying too, as like when you're younger, like some of those themes, like you see it and you're like, okay, like where's the evolution, where's the fight or whatever, and then rewatching it with those adult eyes and like now all the lessons that you've learned, and you're like, wow, this is a completely new level of it. So I relate to that so much. And Digimon itself, like, because I recently was watching Pokemon too. You know, I don't like to put like two baddies next to each other, but they're such on a completely different level with like the topics and the themes. And I'm like, Digimon really was like, it's been doing that for years. Like, where have the people been? But I did, you know, that kind of leads me into my next thing with, you know, Digimon. We're talking about, you know, being into the series as it airs. You are rewatching it now, still loving it, still finding things from it to pull. What do you think about Digimon, especially Digimon Tamers, this being one of their more darker, realistic seasons? What do you think about it makes it so timeless that you enjoyed it then and you're enjoying it now as an adult?
To me, it's about character development, and one thing I've just like learned in general in regards to writing and storytelling is like you have to have characters that the audience cares about. Like if you don't care about these people, then the story is kind of like whatever. But I think Digimon has always done an amazing job at writing children that you want to be friends with as a child, and giving them dimension, like giving them layers. Even from the first two seasons, they all have crests, and those crests are directly tied to, I feel like, their biggest obstacle, but also their greatest strength. And for them to be able to get their Digimon to evolve, they have to hit a place in themselves to where they are meeting that crest, the crest of courage, the crest of hope. And they always have this big climactic moment where they do reach that point, and then there's this evolution. And I think, obviously the writers to me were very intentional in how they do that. But that's stuff that you don't forget because, again, you're like growing up with this person. They're not the way, and I think, especially, this isn't my critique with anime. No, this is kind of a critique I have with anime sometimes, especially like big franchise type animes, is sometimes I feel like they kind of move away so much from character development and kind of like giving these people like these characters real backgrounds and things like that. And I think that was always the foundation of Digimon. And then to then go to season two where these kids are older, so now you're also growing up with them. They're about the age you are when you're watching it, so now you're really like invested. And when you're talking about Last Evolution and when they did Digimon Tri, like that cements like this relationship you have with them because now they're even older. And I watched, you were talking about the Adventure O2 movie. I saw that in theaters, and it's based in like 2012. I think the movie itself is based in 2012, but I was like, I'm in the age bracket as like as Davis, and so I'm like, I literally grew up with these kids. So I think, being an adult now, like there's just, these feel like your friends, like these feel like people that you have really gone on this trip with, to see them also grow with you. But even with season three with Tamers, where, so as of now, there hasn't been any talking. Trust me, I was on Google as I'm watching this. I'm
You're
like,
like, where's the next
it's
thing?
been like 20, it's almost 25 years. Like, what's up? But there hasn't been any type of anything I've seen about a movie or any of them revisiting this season in particular. But again, like when you start this series out, like it's, you're getting to know these characters. You get a background. Like Rika, her mom is a supermodel and isn't really around, and Rika's kind of like an alt girl. Like she's not into the beauty pageant stuff, so she has this disconnect, this sense of loneliness. She has a resentment toward Renamon because, to Rika, the only thing that really gives her a kick is winning. She's this like superstar card game, because in Tamers, Digimon, they're in on the joke a bit on what Digimon is. On season 1 and 2, this is their world. In season 3, they're watching season 1 and 2 like we are. So in their world, like Digimon is like, it's a product. So they're playing the card games, they're into like it as they are fans, and now they find out that these things are actually real. And Rika is this like world champion Digimon card game player, and then she gets a Digimon Renamon, and in the beginning, all she cares about is Renamon getting stronger, evolving. Renamon, on the other hand, is trying to create this personal connection with Rika in the way that she's not getting with her mom. And you see this resentment, you see this battle of like love, and this young girl trying to figure out where she can find love in, and you see how that really hits the fan at one point and how she's almost losing it all, but you see how she really overcomes this. and how she's able to like really lean into the love that she's getting from Renamon and the companionship that she's getting from Takato and Henry, and how that ends up ultimately repairing the relationship she has with her mom, and that she's able to gain empathy and understanding where her mom is at in her career, and it just brings them all together. And it's just like, how can you not like be invested with into these people? Because again, like, we're children, like we're little kids, we don't even understand, like kind of like we're not paying attention to that. But to be an adult and then you're like, wow, like y'all really wrote all of this in on a kid's television show, like this is really deep. And it's, each character has like a backstory of them overcoming something, and then you see how they are really growing, and like in the same time like their Digimon are growing. And also just something I've always loved so much about Digimon, and again, not like you were saying, not to put two baddies against each other with Digimon and Pokemon, is like they have one Digimon and they talk. So I think just that conversation, and just that to hear the conversations that these tamers are having with their partners, and them to call these Digimon their partners, like they're not saying like, it's like you're my partner, is literally what they're saying on the show. Is like they're building these connections, and to see how the Digimon talk to each other, and that's always something I loved. There was this moment when I was watching Last Evolution where I think they all met up at like Izzy's apartment or something, and like Agumon and Gabumon, like they all, you could tell they hadn't seen each other in a minute, because they're you know, their partners are older now, but they see each other and they're like, oh my god, hey. I was just like, my heart, like I literally almost just melted on the floor. I was like, they haven't seen each other in so long, like they, yeah, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. I was like, this is just so adorable, like they really have a relationship. So it's like you're just, and as a viewer, as a fan, like you're in on, you know, you're watching it too, so it's like you're reuniting with these people too. It just feels like a big old reunion with everyone, so you're just like, oh my god, these are my friends.
Yes. Something that like I feel like in all that you said is like this theme is like Digimon has a way of having like an ensemble, and a large ensemble. Because if you think about Adventure, there was seven of them, and then you know the spoilers. 30 years later, you know, Kari comes in at the end. Hikari comes in at the end, and it's eight of them. So you have like, okay, seven of them, and then they each have partners. So that's 16 of them. Everyone with their own personality and own storyline. And like you said, the Digimon are sentient. They talk, and they're like, and especially because I have been rewatching O1 recently. It's like I remember thinking to myself, like, why do these kids keep getting split up? Because they get split up, like, every two episodes, then they get to united. I'm like, oh, yeah, because there's 16 of them. Like, you need to have moments where it's four of them so we can follow some type of storyline here.
And
But
just
it's
flesh
like,
these kids out, like.
yeah, and they flesh them out so well, where you know them, you know their little background, their little history, like TK and Yamato, or Matt in I'm watching the sub, but like I use the names interchangeably, and so it's like they have them as brothers, and then Daichi and Hikari, and then you know everyone, and then you move, and then you know like in O2 they were like, all right, eight is too many. Let's back it down to five, and then there's gonna be six one later. Like, but still you have like so much development there. And there's a thing too that I feel like would be annoying when people compare to Pokemon. I'm like, they're not alike at all, because it's just, I feel like they're two different types of shows to begin with. But I love what you said, because I feel like I'm a very emotional bro. I was tearing up. We talk about like, I love when in the movies when they were like reuniting, as I was like, you know, and those little gags where they're all together, and like the humans are talking, but the Digimons are like doing their
In
own
the
little
corner,
things. Yeah,
yes.
and they're like always doing something or eating, and you're just like, but it's those things that really humanize. And I do think that something that you said too about them being like partners, and the storyline in O3, where it's like that is such a theme in Digimon 2, where it's like it's not just the partner being like attack and the Digimon attacks, like the Digimon 2 has their own like storyline, or they're being blocked by something and they can't evolve. And it's like it's hard to do that in general, and to have done that consistently in different iterations where it still feels fresh and like new and enticing. Like, man, kudos to Digimon team. They was doing the work.
Absolutely. And like, I mean, I think to see that it's still good like decades later. And, even when I watched O2, it definitely it received some backlash, rightfully so, because they played in our face a little bit. But it was also a good story, but it opened up the door to me. And I'm like, look, Digimon creators, if you're watching this, take this as free advice. I was like, y'all can make an anthology. I was like, there's still more you could do with this. There's so many stories you can tell about about Tamers or Digidestineds and their partners or Digimon off these one-off story type things. I'm like, there's still so much you could do in this universe and different stories you can tell even now. And just the fact that you can revisit these characters and they're still interesting, like to be like, oh, like now you run a ramen shop and I'm actually really interested to see that you have a ramen shop. Yeah, it's just like I'm still very invested in like what they're doing. And sometimes those moments, like you're saying, where they're just in their different cliques, the Digimon are talking and the Destin are talking, sometimes those moments are even better than the action scenes because it's just
Yes.
like, oh, this just feels so real. It just feels like I'm in this space with them. And, again, like that is very hard to create, not only for an anime, but just for a series period. Like that is very difficult to accomplish. And I think, they need their flowers.
Yes. And something you mentioned about rewatching is like it holds up. Like some shows are very, and it might be the aspect of Digimon being in like the digital world, but it holds up in a way that like it doesn't feel dated because a lot of times too, a lot of shows, the jokes, the things like they depended on talking about, even if it's Japan and we're not Japanese, like you can still see the time and the era that it was made. And Digimon never, like, as I'm rewatching it now, I'm like, you could think this show was created now. Like it doesn't feel dated at all, with any of the elements that they had covered.
No, not at all.
One thing I wanted to say because I had the wiki open. So the writer of Digimon Tamers, Chiaki Kanaka. So they when they did Digimon Adventure 2020. So it says here that he posted on his blog that they did have plans to create Digimon Tamers 2020. And that would have been a continuation of an audio drama that was released in the 2018 limited edition Blu-ray box that went out of Digimon Tamers. But Toei Animation rejected it, and Kanaka said that it was kind of like casting problems because some of the actors would have been too old. But damn, so they were thinking about it. They were thinking about doing a reboot.
Yeah, and I had saw some stuff about the audio drama, and I'm interested. I really want to just like find a transcript for it and just like read and see what it would be like. But yeah, I would be curious, even if it's not necessarily like the cast that we watched on the show. Like I would be interested in them revisiting that universe. Especially like it's the first. There's some about them first three. I loved Frontier as well. Like I don't want to go on a tangent about season 4 because I thought it was cool, but it was some about them first 3 seasons. I'm just like, y'all could just keep cooking in this world, in these worlds, and I would be good.
Yes. Yes, let it happen. But I think too, like they were like they kept revisiting Digimon and Digimon Adventure. They were like, this really where we're at. But even now, I think there's like a new Digimon season. I think Ghost Game is the last one. I'm like, y'all be they're not letting this go.
No, no, and I started watching. I started watching Ghost Game. It's good. It reminds me if you ever watched like someone put a good reference there. Like it's kind of like Scooby Doo. Yeah, it's a lighter watch. It's episodic. Like you don't. There's an overall arc, but mostly it's just like these little mysteries that have every episode. It's a nice watch.
That's very interesting. I hadn't I had honestly, if it's not like the main people, I don't like look back. I'm like, I don't know what y'all doing Digimon. But I did want to get into because we kind of touched upon this, but I'm sure as big fans as we are, we have 300 points for every question. What is something about Digimon Tamers specifically that you think people get wrong, or got wrong back then, or getting wrong now when they're thinking about this season?
I think some things I've seen people say was that it was like boring. Especially when we were like younger, they're like, oh, it seems a little bit boring. But I think it was just, we weren't ready for that tone. And again, I don't think we're kids, like we're watching Fox Kids, like everything's in your face and da da da. And, you know, this had a little bit of a darker tone to it. So I don't think it's a boring, I think it's one of the most interesting seasons that they've ever written or created. I just think it's a little bit more complex. You need to listen. Like, you need to actually listen to what they're saying and, like, listen to the lore, and you will be hooked. Like, I've seen the show before, but literally, I'm, like, on the edge of my seat, like, ready to hit next episode because I'm like, wait, how does this fold out, or what goes on, especially, like, those, like, last 20 episodes. Like when they're obviously wrapping up the story at this point, but then something else is going on, and I'm like, Jerry, like what's up, girl? Like, you know, she's getting real eerie. It's giving like thriller at this point, and just like they just keep you like wanting more. I'm like, I'm never gonna get work done right now because I'm just keep watching this show. I can't stop watching it. But yeah, I would say people thinking this season was boring. Like, no, we weren't ready. We just weren't ready yet.
And something you said too about like, you know, you mentioned this kind of like when you talk about Ghost Game, but like it made me think of this point that like Digimon and back then, like they just put American cartoons and anime, like they try to make them as if they were all the same. And now as we're older, we understand like anime follows a very specific formula where the plot and each episode goes into each other. So, you know, as a kid when we're watching this, it comes out every Saturday. Our attention spans is not there to be like, oh, this is picking up from last week's episode. And even if they do like previously on Digimon, like you just don't like really put those things together as a child. And I think a lot of the times that's why like when you're revisiting stuff as an adult, you're like, oh yeah, especially binging now, because we didn't binge stuff back then either. So, and that happened to me when I rewatched it on VHS in high school, having every episode follow each other. I was like, whoa, this is way different than what I thought it was back when it first came out. But
Absolutely.
that really makes a difference.
It does. And, you know, I think you really hit a point when you were talking about like, when I feel like, you know, Dragon Ball Z is what ushered like anime into like the Western hemisphere in general. But like you said, like these American networks, like they're thinking it's like watching any other cartoons, that are like, we could just throw these out there. I don't know if this is fact, but I know a lot of shows that we were consuming back then were not even being put out in order. So I would not be
so Sakura. Card captors.
You're like watching and you're like, when did this happen? Or you'll watch it and it just feels, and you know, kids are way more smarter than people let them out to be. Kids are very smart and they know when something isn't up. If something's not clicking, they know. So I think you also add that in. We had these short attention spans. There could be an episode out of order. Like, when did you get to ultimate level? We didn't even see you get to champion. I don't know if it was that bad, but you know, who knows what all of this stuff is going on. We're not paying attention. And then on top of that, it's 50 episodes. Woo, this is like, that's an investment for a kid. Like that's almost every week is a new episode for an entire year.
Yes.
There's 52 weeks in the year. So most seasons of a show are like 26 episodes tops. So I'm like, we got double that on one series or one season of a show. So yeah, we checked out on that. Especially Third In, and it's a darker show. The characters that we grew up watching are not on it. And then something else I noticed, especially like, I'm a sub watcher in general, but for the shows I grew up on, I just rewatch them dubbed for the nostalgia of it all. But a lot of the voice actors from the original series came back for season 3 playing different characters, but it was not introduced that way. You're a kid, so I'm hearing the voice actress of Kari voicing the teacher who's now an adult. So immediately I'm like, oh, Kari's a teacher, so she should know about Digimon. She should know like all of this is going on because that's clearly her voice, and she has a very distinctive voice. Like the dub actress has a very particular voice. So I was like, you don't just do that. It throws every without any to kids without being, adults. You're like, I get it. Like, girl, get that money. But for kids, you're like, wait, that's Kari, right? Like, what? Where is she? I don't know. So it makes things even more confusing.
And I'm in the Reddit. That's how you know you cross a different level when you're in the Reddit for the series. That is like one of the most common misconceptions because of the voice actress. Everyone believes that. There's posts about it all the time, and they're like, it has to be. They're like, no, they just use the same voice actress. But what you said about it, like, I remember I'm a huge Clamp fan, and with Cardcaptor, known as Cardcaptors in the U.S., but it's Cardcaptor Sakura. When I was like doing my rewatch in college, I was like, these episodes don't make sense. And then, lovely fan, the older millennials they put in work on them fan pages. Somebody had outlined what American episodes were the actual episodes. So then there was a chart that like showed like, this is what this is. And I'm like, these people doing God's work here. This is, but
wow.
it is crazy. And I mean, even back in the day, like there was, I think, and there's this I know my listeners listen to every episode. They're so tired of me mentioning this podcast. But if you haven't heard, there's a podcast called Anime in America that Crunchyroll did with Yodoya Travis as the host. And it literally from the beginning of time to now, how anime got in America. And they talk about, like, there was this one mecha series that aired in America that was 2 different shows. And they would splice the episodes up and make it like one show. 2 completely different shows. Dubbed it, mashed it up, and you just watching 2 different shows at
Don't
one
know what they did that with the first Digimon movie. Like the very first Digimon movie were like 2 movies put together, and it doesn't make sense. And even as a kid, you're like, okay, and you just kind of go with it. But it's 2 different movies put in like
it's 3. Because
it's 3.
It's the beginning one, and then the digital one when like they're a little bit older, and then the last one with the completely different characters.
You're right.
That was like I have this specific memory of like when back in the video stores, we would go to the video store. I'd make my parents rent that movie every single time. I have that, and then like that Digimon movie is directed by Mamoru Hosoda, who's like, that was one of his first directing works. So then when you watch like, I don't know if you've seen like Summer Wars, Bell, like I
watched Bell, yes, Bell.
So like all
that
digital,
makes so much sense. That makes
right?
so
like
much sense.
How the digital world is, because when I was watching Summer Wars, I'm like, this reminds me of Digimon, and I'm like, oh yeah, the Digimon movie was the blueprint for Summer Wars. He really drew inspiration from that. Yeah, so it's telling you like America just be like, this makes sense, at least back in the day, because we didn't know any better. But that kind of leads me, into this next question, which, you've watched Digimon Tamers now. What is an unpopular opinion that you have of the series now that people, like fans, may not agree with you on when it comes to Tamers?
Ooh, an unpopular opinion. I would say I wish the later Tamers got more love. And that was Kazu Kento. She gets her moment, but I think Kazu Kento should have got way more love than they got, because for most of the show, in the beginning, they're just Takato's friend. They don't even know Digimon are real. They just know the card game. Then they find out Guillaumon is real, and they're like, oh, this is cool. And they're like in on it. And then they're like, well, we want to be tamers. And they kind of just get these Digimon, but that's just kind of it. Like there's no real. And I was like, it would have been cool, especially if you have, I think they do a good job with what they do with 51 episodes. But I'm like, if you got 51 episodes, I wish they would have had, like, especially I think Tamers had some of the best sequences, like when they were doing their, swiping their the what are they called it, the D powers and everything. Like I wish they would have got like a good animation for that because they did it. Jerry got like a piece of an animation, so those are those little pieces where I was like, oh, I would have loved to see their little sequence of them swiping it and doing everything. So yeah, I wish their tamer arts got a little bit more attention is my unpopular opinion or critique.
I agree. Not that I've recently saw Tamers, but because I've recently been watching '01, and I'm like, I see that, and I see that being the theme because I'm watching like oh my god, I'm terrible with the Digimon names, but Taichi and Matt's Digimon Evolved, and they're always like extra, and then they got Mimi's Digimon, and it's like 1 second they're like they don't even do the extra sequence with the
They got
music.
the CGI.
Let's not talk about the CGI because that CGI was doing something, but
But even
it was so bad.
I was like, it was always the two leads. I was like, why do they get the budget? They get the budget.
Yes, and then everybody else is like, we're gonna put all 6 of you on the screen, and not even individual Digimon. Like, here's this little collage of everyone else digivolving, and you're just like, we see you guys. You're not slick.
Yeah, like we could tell who the favorites were here.
Yes.
So yeah, I wish they would have given Kazu and Kento like a sequence, like a Digimodify sequence where they get the cool, nice hand-drawn animation, fluid animation scenes, and you could tell they put a little bit more time into that type thing. I'm always a nerd about that, and one thing I do like about like the first 2 seasons, especially when they brought it back for Try in the films, is like it was cool that everyone got a mega level because that was always my beef as well. It's like, why don't they get a mega level? And it was cool that, okay, cool, now everyone at least gets a mega level. Everyone gets the same amount of like effort into their animation, their evolution sequences and stuff like that. Like they went back and were like, okay, we'll give you all the cool ones or whatever too.
Fine. Well, you'll let you have it. No, I completely agree. So as we are wrapping up with our Digimon talk, when you think about Digimon Tamers, what do you think Digimon Tamers' legacy is?
I feel like Digimon Tamers' legacy is opening the door of where the franchise can go as far as making it more complex. I think this was like a defining moment where you're like, oh, this isn't just like, I mean, it was never like a Pokemon dupe to me, but I feel like, but I feel like Tamers is when it really like set itself apart, and they're like, we can really do something with this, and again, like even bringing it to the recent movie, the Adventure '02 movie. Even though, again, like I have some beefs with that film, it was good. Like it was a good film, and it got like, you want to talk about Tamers is dark. That had the theater gasping.
I didn't get to watch it in theaters because they didn't bring it to a theater near me, but I was watching it like, what? This is scary. Like I was scared.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's blood. I was like, what's going on? But it again, I think this is another testament of like, they grow up with their audience. Like, they have their series like Ghost Game and stuff, which is still very like kid friendly. But I'm like, oh, they also have this version of them. There's some duality in this where they're like, okay, like we also know who grew up with this show and we know what y'all are watching. So I was like, oh, I'm hooked. Like, this is interesting, like to see, and it still makes sense and it still fits the world so well. And I think it took a season like Tamers to kind of even make that possible, of like, how far can we stretch this? And I hope they keep going that way. Like, I would love to see Digimon just completely pivot out of like the children's brand to a degree and lean into like adult anime, and like they would go crazy if they gave us some like Jujutsu Kaisen type. They could go there. I want to see it.
Me too. It's so funny you said that about O2 because when I watched it, my tagline for the review was that it does a good job of mixing nostalgia for the OG series while aging it up for older fans. And something that you mentioned too with like the last Kazuna, Last Evolution, and this movie is like it really like is such a departure from like because Last Evolution had me crying. Like it was so dark in the sense of like the feelings like that you feel as when you're older. And I can see, from what I remember of Tamers and, obviously I haven't watched it in so long, but you refreshing my memory on it, it's like, yeah, like I can see where that came from that. And I'm glad that they tapped back into that for these older reboots or like continuations of the stories because it's just like, face it, like there's so much more now like anime and stuff that people are into that like Digimon coming out as a new franchise, I don't really see it really getting new fans. Like I will obviously, if it's on and somebody discovers it, but it's not, I don't think it airs on TV anymore. It's not like on Toonami like a lot of these shows end up becoming. So it's like your older fans, we're here, we're waiting with open arms.
Give us the blood.
Toy animation.
Yeah, like give us the blood, give us the drama. Like we're here for it. And I again, like I would love to see them because with Last Evolution, with the latest film, like I can tell they're really, using the OG cast more as like a springboard to introduce like these one-off characters and like their backstories. So I'm like, make it an anthology. Keep giving us, and they kind of did it even with the first movie. I always forget, and I'm kind of go down a rabbit hole about, or, once I'm done watching Tamers, I want to go down a rabbit hole about what was his name? The original Terriermon's owner. I forget his name. Not Henry, but I forget his name. Blonde hair, blue eye boy from the first film. I kind of want to do a whole comparison.
Yes.
Because Willis, yes, because he makes a cameo in the second movie for like a split second. He's in it. I'm like, Willis versus Henry. Like, I want to see who is better for Terriermon. But yeah, I think kind of bringing back to what you were saying. Like, yeah, I think I would love to see them just completely lean into their adult audience, and I think it would end up attracting more if they just give us more of like what they've been doing with these last movies and making it complex and really good animation. Because I'm a sucker for Angemon, and when he came in on Last Evolution in the beginning, I was like, oh, that's my dude. Oh, let me some Angemon. Him and Angemon, also they could dive into. I would love like an angel arc.
There's so much. There's so much there. And then with Devimon and listen, call us Toy Animation.
Us, like let's all have a group chat here about like there's some things y'all could be doing with Digimon, man. Also, I totally forgot. It's been sitting next to me this whole time. And it also kind of I'm a little embarrassed, but we'll get into it. But speaking of Digimon and products, I have the D-Power from back in the day. And this is where I'm going to self-drag / I deserve every drag that happened. But back in the day, I don't know, I was in this creative kick. I was a kid. I was always the green one. Like anytime there was a show with color, I was always the green one. But I got the red one. I was like, I really want Henry's. But I tried to paint over the red at one point.
Listen, you didn't know.
I didn't know, but I kept it, and I'm gonna find. Eventually, I want to find like someone who does like toy restoration, just to like. It needs some work. Like this is a relic, but I do have my D-Power. It does work. I should have put some batteries in it, but you shake it and then you swipe the card. So I got my D-Power.
Listen, I love that. And that is what a great way to end this episode. Oh my God. Anytime Digimon, because I feel like Digimon will, secretly get brought up. And I'm like, that that like audio that's like, let me tell you my theories. Like that's me. Like I'm like, hold on, we could talk about this because I love Digimon so much, and it has, and as somebody who was a lover, and you may agree with this, like you know when you were younger and you like if people were like you like Pokemon or you like Digimon, and I'm like no, I like both. And Digimon, at least where I'm from, Digimon was like the not cool one to like because there wasn't like video games with it like Pokemon was. So I just am like when you said when you had said another anime, I'm not gonna say which one it is because if I talk about it with somebody else, but when you switched to Digimon, I was like, yes, I've been dying to talk about Digimon. And I feel like now we need some spin-off episodes or do some bonus stuff because we're here. We're here. I have more conversations I can tap into.
Like, seriously, I'm down to talk about Digimon anytime. It's just that good. People, wake up! Wake up, wake up, America! We need to be watching Digimon! Like, we need to be watching Digimon.
Yes, we'll put them on the Digimon. This is every time somebody's on here, I'm like, we're getting the agenda of that anime, and this is the Digimon agenda for all seasons, especially season 3. But thank you so much, Serrandon, for coming on my podcast. This has been so much fun, and of course, like I said, I will have all your social media links in the description of the episode. But are there any upcoming projects, anything that people can look forward to, or any ways in which we can support you, support the film, or anything you want us to go to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This was super fun. Like, this was a blast. But yeah, if you want to support me, you can follow me on all socials at Serrandon. It's just my first name. I am currently in the process of filming some new videos for Plugin. I've got some cool games and stuff that I'm excited to talk about. So stay tuned on that. And yeah, gotta have it. Fingers crossed I get into some more festivals, but regardless, it will be out this year at some point, and it'll be really fun. So stay tuned.
Yes, well, thank you so much. And for all of you guys watching or listening, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of The Wonder of Anime. As always, if you like this episode, you love it, please be sure to leave a review wherever you listen. Comment along. Shout out to Dad Needs to Talk, Kendra, those of you guys who are watching on YouTube, and leave a whole comment. I love it. And yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace out.
Peace!